To prune or not to prune? That is the question. What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode here on the MIgardener channel. I'm so excited for this episode because in this episode, we're going to talk about pruning fruit trees and fruit bushes. This is going to be a comprehensive video because the question constantly comes up this time of year, Luke, what should I prune? What shouldn't I prune? Can I prune yet or should I wait? And so there's a lot of questions around this topic, and so I wanted to make it kind of comprehensive because in a lot of cases, pruning can be up to you and your discretion and your growing styles. And so if you need to prune, sometimes pruning is okay. And it doesn't really hurt fruit production at all. It just kind of reins in the tree or the shrub, whatever you're pruning, kind of reins it in, makes it a little more manageable for the next year. Other times it could hurt production, and sometimes it can help production. So there's a lot of mystery around pruning, but right now is when you want to start pruning. You can also prune up until the tree starts coming out of dormancy. I prefer to prune sooner than later because it just allows the tree longer time to heal. So when it comes to like peaches and things like that, you can prune even though there's leaves right on the tree. You can prune deciduous trees, apples, pears. You can prune it right now even though there's still leaves on the tree. You want to wait with some of your other more I guess perennial stuff. If you're down south, like oranges, you want to wait because right now that is when they start to flower. Orange citruses in general here in Michigan, we don't have to worry about that. We do have some citruses indoors, but when it comes to like citruses outdoors, we always get asked, how do I know what to prune? Well, you have to know when their flowering cycle is, because if you prune citruses, you could hurt their production because citruses will flower on new growth in the winter time, or kind of what we consider winter time. They'll start flowering around late October all the way through until about February. So do not prune then, so you can know where the fruit's being set at. Now, when it comes to peaches and things like that, deciduous trees that will lose their leaves and go dormant, you can prune even when there's leaves on, and typically pruning is up to your discretion. Now, when it comes to peaches, you have to be careful because peaches will fruit only on new growth. So what we do is typically we'll look at the tree where it fruited before, and you can see where it's actually going to fruit next year. I'll show you how you know where it's going to fruit next year. It's very simple because the tree actually lets you know where it's going to fruit next year. So as the tree is ready to go dormant, what it does is it prepares next year's flowering cycle because peaches and cherries will flower before the foliage. This is something that's very incredible that always looks great when there's a big tree of just flowers and no leaves at all. And what you'll find is that the tree will kind of prepare itself for that next flowering cycle, and it will flower on new growth. So if you've previously pruned or had a bunch of new growth, you'll see that the new growth is green. Green growth is new growth. It does not have a hard cambium layer. However, hard woody bark is old growth. And so all along here you see bark, and you can follow that bark along here. And what you'll notice is that there are two different bud types. There are bud types like this. There are bud types, focus. There are bud types like this that are pointy. And then there are bud types that are rounded. Rounded bud points are actual flower joints. That's where flowers are going to occur next year. Pointed joints are where there's going to be future leaves, future branches, things like that. So leaves and branches will form on old growth. Flowers will typically form on new growth. So you can just keep that in mind when you're going to prune your tree. You can prune to kind of rein it in, kind of bring it into height and kind of shape it up for next year. But when it comes to pruning, you want to make sure that you don't clip out any of that new growth, otherwise you could harm your yields for next year. The same thing goes for cherries. Like I said, you'll see that on every cherry, there's new growth and there's buds. Those buds will form flowers next year. Also, you'll see the same pointed buds that you saw in peaches. Those are some of your flower first, leaf later. See? FFLL, that's how you remember. So these flower first, leaf later plants are a lot of your stone fruits. All of your stone fruits actually. They will flower first, leaf later. And so you'll notice that the tree will let you know where it's planning on flowering next year. So just keep that in mind when you're pruning, that yes, you can prune to keep it to height. I always prefer to go with a semi-dwarf, so there's not a whole lot of pruning involved. But if you do need to prune, just remember that if you prune, make sure you're knowing what you're pruning so you don't hurt your yields for next year. Now when it comes to things like apples and pears, these are leaf first, flower later. So these will put out leaves first and then flowers. And so what you always want to do is you want to just look at growth patterns. If you like what you see and you don't need to prune a lot, that's fine. Typically fruiting will happen on 2-year-old branches when it comes to apples and pears. So if you have something that's grown, what will happen is it will grow and then the next year it will fruit. So what you want to make sure that you do is you want to make sure you keep a lot of your first year growth. Anything that is already fruited on it typically won't fruit again. With apples and pears, generally what all you want to do is just prune for shape. And we have a lot of videos on that. And we've covered things like dead, dying, diseased, crisscrossing, just increasing airflow, things like that. But the best time to prune is now. And you can prune it however you want it. Just know that obviously when you prune, you want to make sure that you're taking only about 1/3 of the plant off at most. If you have a plant of this size that is of fruiting size, 1/3 is generally pretty accepted. For me, I probably wouldn't take off any from this plant because I already pruned it when it was dormant in the spring. And so this is pretty much as far as I want to go for now. Now next year that'll be probably different. I'll probably take off some and I'll probably prune it up and kind of shape it up a little bit. But again, when it comes to apples and pears and things like that, totally up to your discretion. All right, so now we come to one of the more fun plants to grow that does require quite a bit of pruning that we do get a lot of questions on, and that's brambles. This can be blackberries, raspberries, marionberries, any type of bramble. Typically, some of your they typically have thorns. Some don't have thorns because they've been bred out, but a lot of your thorny brambles will be something you want to prune back heavily. And that's because brambles will fruit on next year's growth, new growth. And so what you want to do is you want to encourage new growth. And so we have a really beautiful plant here. I hate to, I hate to see this plant go, but I'm not growing it for its foliage, I'm growing for its fruit. And so you can do this with foliage still on it. All the energy is down in the roots. It's not going to harm it. Everyone always says, wait till the plant is dormant. You can, but once you've gotten your first frost, and the weather is down into the 30s and 40s, there's really, the plant is not growing anymore. It's clearly not worried about still producing energy. And so what you want to do is you want to just get it ready to produce new growth next year in the growing season. And so what I will do is I will take the plant's height here during the regular growing season, and I will cut it down by 2/3. 2/3 is generally what you want to do for brambles. This also applies to grapes as well. Grapes, you can expect new growth or fruiting on new growth. You don't have to prune it back as far as brambles because it's a vine, but you want to still prune it back about 1/3 or so. But with brambles, 2/3 is what you're going to want. So about 2/3 there. I just eyeball it. But all that beautiful growth, unfortunately, it's going to go, because what this is going to do is going to produce a very bushy plant next year that's going to send out many new canes, and the fruit will form on those new canes. So over here, beautiful plant. Oh, these did so well this year. They fruited great. So just taking off about 2/3 of this plant here. So there's that, and then there's one over here. We'll get, okay, there's that. So there we go. So that is brambles, and that's really your big three. You have stonefruits, deciduous fruiting trees, and citrus, and brambles. So there's your 4 actually. And so I hope this helped. I really do hope that you all don't overcomplicate it. We do have pruning guides for things like blueberries and specific stuff like that. I will post links to pruning videos that I think will help you out in the description box below. We do get asked a lot about blueberries. Those are a little bit trickier, a little more hands-on, and I will post that because I think that one will really help, and I don't have any blueberries growing here to give you a good example, a visual. And then also we have just general pruning tips and tricks. I'll post that to I'll post a link to a complete pruning guide in the description box below. where we talk about pruning out like crisscrossing diseased, dead and dying branches and things like that, that will really help you out with just knowing what is good to prune away first before you prune away something that's healthy. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. If you do have any comments, questions, or concerns, post them in the comments box below. I read everything, and I'd love to be able to field the questions and concerns that are coming in about this. And also, what I did have to say in closing is that pruning is kind of your art. You get to decide what the plant looks like next year. That's what's really fun, is that, you know, there's certain guidelines to choose from, but make it what works for you. Make it fun for you. If you want a really round tree next year, prune it so it's round. As long as it doesn't break any of the pruning rules, you can make a tree whatever shape you want. You can make it short and stubby, you can make it tall and slender. It really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, the rules will apply, and it really should fit your growing style. That's why I never follow a one-size-fits-all solution. I just give you the tips and tricks to follow so you have better success, and then you can fill in the empty gray areas with what suits you. So as always, I hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something new, and I'll catch you all later. This is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow big or go home, and we'll catch you all later. See ya.